The wallet was thick black leather, expensive, stuffed with crisp bills, and a platinum card that gleamed like it had never been swiped. Clara Bennett stood frozen in the middle of Maple Street as the rain began to fall, her trembling fingers wrapped around something that didn't belong to her. Her shift had ended hours ago. Her stomach growled, her feet ached. No one would know. No one would see. But it wasn't about who was watching. It was about the choice she made now, and how that single moment would quietly unravel everything she thought she knew about strangers, wealth, and love. Welcome to A Story That Lingers. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching. If these stories resonate with you, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel, because tomorrow we'll have another special story for you. Clara Bennett had always been the kind of person who returned shopping carts to their stalls, even in the pouring rain. She left thank you notes for her landlord. She bought coffee for the homeless man who sat outside her flower shop, even when her own bank account hovered just above zero. That's why, even though she was exhausted after her double shift soaked from ankle to knee with puddle water and cradling her phone between shoulder and cheek as she talked to her sister Maya about leftover pasta, she stopped cold when her toe hit something on the sidewalk. "Hang on," Clara said, lowering the phone. She crouched down, squinting at the object on the damp pavement. It was a wallet, sleek, designer. She picked it up instantly, noticing the weight of it. Not the kind of wallet you find lying around. Not the kind someone forgets lightly. She glanced around. No one. Just the flickering street lamp above and the distant sound of a siren bouncing off wet buildings. Maple Street was deserted. Inside, she found at least $400 in cash, an elite Crossbank black card, and a business card. Julian Cross, CEO, Crosstech Industries, private line unlisted. Clara blinked. Julian Cross. The Julian Cross. She'd read about him in a magazine once, some tech billionaire who was born with nothing and built an empire. There was also a brief article about how ruthless he was. Brilliant, sure, but not exactly warm and fuzzy. For a moment, Clara's heart pounded. She looked at the cash again. Her rent was due in 3 days. Her knees ached from standing 12 hours straight. Her tips today barely covered her bus fare. This kind of money, she could pretend she never saw the wallet. But even the thought made her stomach churn. She took a deep breath and slid the wallet into her bag. She didn't want the money. She just didn't want to be the person who kept it. Maya was still on the line. "Everything okay?" Clara stood up and kept walking. "Yeah, just picked up something someone lost." That night, Clara sat at her small kitchen table with the wallet open in front of her. She carefully avoided touching the cash again, as if it might stain her fingers. Her laptop hummed as she searched for Crosstech's public contact information. Eventually, she found a generic email, info@crosstechindustries.com. She hesitated. What was she even supposed to say? She typed, "Hello, I believe I found Mr. Julian Cross's wallet on Maple Street tonight. I would like to return it personally or ensure it reaches him safely. Please advise where to bring it. Thank you, Clara Bennett." She didn't expect a reply anytime soon. She also didn't expect the odd tightness in her chest as she hit send. It wasn't pride or nerves exactly. It was something quieter, something like hope. The reply came the next morning. From Executive Assistant Sasha, gcrosstechindustries.com, subject relost wallet body Ms. Bennett. "Thank you for notifying us. You may bring the item to our central office, 1270, Lexington Avenue, 42nd floor. Please ask for Sasha at reception. Regards, Sasha Green, Executive Admin to Mr. Julian Cross." That was it. "No, we appreciate your honesty. No, thank you. Just logistics." Clara stared at the screen, chewing the inside of her cheek. Still, she got on the train that afternoon with the wallet in her purse and a knot in her stomach. The Crosstech building towered over Midtown like a fortress of black glass and steel. Inside, it was quiet, the kind of quiet that made people walk on carpets as if their footsteps didn't deserve to echo. Clara approached the reception desk. "Hi, I'm here to see Sasha. I'm returning something." The receptionist didn't smile. She tapped a few keys, then gestured to the elevators. Clara rode up to the 42nd floor alone. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished, chrome doors, tired eyes, hair pulled into a messy bun, the raincoat she'd had for 5 years. When the doors opened, a woman in a fitted blazer was waiting. "Ms. Bennett," Clara nodded. "I'm Sasha. You have the item." Clara handed over the wallet. Without looking inside, Sasha took a white envelope from her pocket and extended it. "Mr. Cross asked me to give you this as a gesture of appreciation." Clara took the envelope silently. There was no handshake, no eye contact. It was over. She stepped back into the elevator. Only when she reached the sidewalk did she open the envelope. Cash, neatly folded. A few $100s, maybe the same amount that had been inside the wallet. Her throat tightened. Something about it felt insulting, like a tip for a task completed. Transactional. Clara walked to the corner past the trash bin, paused, then dropped the envelope inside. It wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. Julian Cross watched the city through his office window, 42 floors above the noise. The struggle, the humanity. Down there, people hurried, hustled, lied, loved, lost. Up here, everything was numbers, margins, growth, control. But today, something gnawed at him. She dropped the envelope in the trash, Sasha said, arms folded tightly. Julian turned his head slightly. You're sure? I saw it myself. She didn't even hesitate. He considered that for a moment. Strange. Maybe not, Sasha added. She didn't look the type to take handouts. Julian said nothing, just tapped the edge of his glass desk with a silver pen. In his world, people took what they could. That was the game. But this woman, Clara Bennett, hadn't just returned the wallet. She'd gone out of her way to do it politely with no drama, and then she refused the reward. Julian had built CrossTech from a busted laptop and a borrowed $200. He understood hunger, but he'd also learned not to trust anything that came for free. Still, Clara intrigued him. I want to know more about her, he said finally. Sasha raised an eyebrow. Should I be concerned? Julian smirked, the corner of his mouth twitching. Not like that, just, who is she? The next morning, Clara opened her shop Maple Blooms at 8 a.m., like she always did. The bell above the door jingled gently as the regulars filed in. Ms. Aldridge wanted her usual roses. Mr. Franklin picked up daisies for his late wife's grave. Clara knew their stories. She liked knowing. But something was different today. She couldn't stop replaying yesterday's trip to CrossTech. The office, the coldness, the envelope, and the man whose name had stayed in her head long after she'd left Julian Cross. Why did it bother her that he hadn't even said thank you? Maya noticed Clara's distracted energy when she stopped by the shop around lunch. You keep rearranging the same lilies, Maya teased, nudging her shoulder. What's going on in that head? Clara sighed. I returned a wallet yesterday. Okay. To a billionaire. Maya blinked. Like an actual billionaire? Clara nodded. Julian Cross, from CrossTech. Wait, the Julian Cross? You're kidding. I found his wallet in the street, reached out, dropped it off. They gave me an envelope of cash. I threw it away. Maya stared at her like she'd sprouted a second head. Clara, I didn't want a reward. Maybe not, but you need it. Clara turned away, brushing a speck of dust from the counter. It just didn't feel right. Like a test. Or like I was being paid to be decent. Maya studied her sister. You really think he noticed? I don't know, Clara whispered. I think I wanted him to. Julian did notice. Later that day, Sasha returned with a thin folder. Clara Bennett, age 29, lives in the Heights, rents a small apartment, runs a flower shop she inherited from her grandmother. Single, never sued, never arrested. College dropout, left to take care of her sister after their parents died. Julian flipped through the pages slowly. No red flags, no angles. Do you think she expected to meet me? He asked quietly. Sasha crossed her arms. Most people would have made a scene. She didn't. That's what's weird. Julian closed the folder. Set up a delivery. Something simple. Personal, but not flashy. Flowers, Sasha asked dryly. Julian almost smiled. Let's not insult her. The next afternoon, Clara found a small package on her shop's doorstep. No return address. Inside, a white ceramic vase, elegant, hand-painted, clearly expensive. Wrapped around it was a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. To Clara, not every return deserves a reward. Some simply deserve to be remembered. J.C. Clara read the note 3 times. Her hands trembled slightly. It wasn't romantic, not really. It was something else. A gesture. She set the vase in the front window. Customers complimented it all day. But she didn't tell them where it came from. That night, she emailed the address she had used before. Mr. Cross, thank you for the vase. It's beautiful. I didn't return your wallet expecting anything, but your message meant more than the gift. Clara. She didn't expect a reply. She got one in 5 minutes. Ms. Bennett, you're right. Sometimes the message matters more. Would you join me for lunch next week? I'd like to thank you in person. JC. Clara stared at the screen for a long time. Then carefully she typed, "All right, but only if it's not about the wallet anymore." "Never was," came the reply. Clara stood in front of the mirrored elevator, smoothing the creases in her navy blue dress. It was the nicest thing she owned, not because it was expensive, but because it made her feel like herself. No sequins, no heels, just something simple, neat, and hers. The doors opened with a soft ding. Julian was already at the table when she arrived, not in a conference room this time, but a private balcony overlooking the river. The sun made the glass towers shimmer around them, like they were sitting inside a dream neither of them truly belonged to. Clara hesitated at the threshold. Julian stood immediately, a rare, genuine smile tugging at his lips. "Clara, thank you for coming. Not every day a billionaire sends a girl a vase," she said, stepping forward. "You didn't take the envelope," he said, gesturing for her to sit. She glanced at the cityscape, then back at him. "Did you expect me to?" "I wasn't sure. People surprise me less and less these days." "Well, I wasn't trying to surprise you." That's what surprised me. Lunch was not what Clara had expected. There was no maitre d', no waiters hovering. The food was simple roasted vegetables, grilled chicken, iced tea. Julian had arranged everything himself. And he listened. He didn't brag, didn't flaunt his wealth. He asked about her shop, her sister, her grandmother, who had started maple blooms with her bare hands and a love for peonies. Clara was cautious at first, but then something shifted. There was an honesty in his questions that didn't feel rehearsed. Like maybe he was just a man tired of being the richest person in every room and ready to be real for once. And when he spoke about his past, about losing his father at 17, building his company from scratch, sleeping on a friend's couch for 8 months, Clara didn't hear a rich man boasting. She heard loneliness echoing beneath the surface. After lunch, Julian walked her to the elevator. He paused before pressing the button. "You were right, by the way." "About what?" "It wasn't about the wallet." Clara smiled softly. "Then what was it about?" He hesitated. "Proof that not everything I've built has isolated me." The elevator opened behind her. Clara stepped inside. Just before the doors slid closed, she said, "You should get out more, Mr. Cross. There's still a whole world that doesn't care about cross-tech." He chuckled under his breath. "Maybe I'll visit it sometime." She winked. "Start with a flower shop." The next week, a shadow stretched across the front window of maple blooms, just as Clara was trimming fresh irises. She looked up, and there he was. No tailored suit, no driver, just jeans, a button-down shirt, and Julian Cross holding a brown paper coffee cup and looking faintly out of place among the blooms. Clara opened the door and leaned against the frame. "You're a long way from your tower. Thought I'd stop by, maybe pick up something." She crossed her arms. "You sending flowers to anyone?" Julian hesitated, then met her eyes. "Yeah, but she doesn't know it yet." Clara's breath caught, but she didn't move. "Come in," she said at last. "Let's find her something that says, honest, slightly awkward, but trying." Julian followed her in. The shop smelled like jasmine and sunlight. For a few minutes there was no billionaire, no CEO, just a man watching a woman arrange petals like she was building a cathedral out of color and care. As the days passed, Julian returned often, always with a reason that wasn't quite a reason. Picking up a bouquet, asking about seasonal blooms, pretending to remember someone's birthday. Clara knew what he was doing, and she let him. Maya, ever the observant sister, raised an eyebrow one evening as they closed the shop. "So, are you two dating yet, or just aggressively flower flirting?" Clara blushed. "It's not like that." Maya snorted. "You're smiling at your phone every night. It's exactly like that." But one rainy Thursday, things shifted. Julian didn't come. He didn't text. Didn't call. Clara tried to brush it off. He was busy, right? A man with $1 billion company couldn't just spend every afternoon in a flower shop. Still, something felt off. It was nearly 9 p.m. when her phone buzzed. A single message. "Rain check, I'm sorry, Jay." That was all. No explanation. No charm. Just absence. Clara stared at the screen, her chest tightening. Not with anger, not quite. With something closer to fear. Because for the first time in years, she'd let herself hope. And hope, as her grandmother used to say, was a delicate thing. Like petals in a storm. The next morning, Clara opened the flower shop alone. The bell above the door jingled, but it wasn't Julian. Just Mrs. Green, the retired piano teacher from down the block, ordering her weekly lilies. Clara tried to smile, tried to focus on ribbon choices and wrapping paper, but her thoughts kept circling like a clock with no hands. She checked her phone twice, no new messages. By lunchtime, she told herself she was being ridiculous. He doesn't owe you anything. He's a customer. A friend, maybe. That's all. But even as she arranged peonies for a bridal bouquet, her mind wandered. Why had he pulled away so suddenly? Julian sat in his penthouse office overlooking the city skyline that once thrilled him. But the view looked smaller now, distant. He stared at the half-written email on his screen, a message to Clara he couldn't seem to finish. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because he wasn't sure he had the right to say it. That afternoon, he'd had lunch with two major investors from Tokyo, then a strategy call with his board, then a meeting with the legal team. All the while, her voice hovered in the back of his mind. There's still a world that doesn't care about Crosstech. He used to think his world was all that mattered. Now, he wasn't so sure. 2 days passed. Still no sign of him. By Saturday morning, Clara had had enough. She dusted her hands on her apron, told Maya to mind the shop, and marched straight to the Crosstech building storm clouds, gathering overhead and inside her chest. Sasha, the receptionist, barely looked up when Clara approached the marble desk. Do you have an appointment? No, Clara said firmly. But I'm not leaving until I speak to Julian Cross. The woman smirked. Mr. Cross is unavailable. Clara narrowed her eyes. Tell him it's the woman who didn't take the money. That made Sasha pause. 10 minutes later, Clara was in the elevator, arms crossed, heart pounding. Not because she was nervous, but because she was mad. Julian looked up as the doors opened. Clara stepped into his office like she owned the floor. You ghost me for 4 days, and I have to come find you. Julian stood slowly. Clara. Don't Clara me, she snapped. If you're not interested, fine, but you don't get to vanish without a word after weeks of whatever this was. He took a breath. It's not that I'm not interested. Then what? He gestured toward the skyline. This, all of this. I built a world up here, but when I'm with you, it's like I don't belong in it anymore. Clara stared at him, confused. You think that's a bad thing? He laughed bitterly. I don't know. Maybe I'm afraid I'll ruin it, that I'll drag you into a world you didn't ask for. She walked to the window and stood beside him. You know what I think, she said, voice soft. I think you're scared of being seen, really seen, without the money, without the name. Julian turned to her. And you're not scared. I've been scared most of my life, Clara replied. But I've also learned that running never fixes it. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and something in his expression cracked. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have called. Clara nodded. Yes, you should have. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Julian asked, would you give me another chance? Clara folded her arms. To show up or to disappear again? To try, he said. To get it right this time. That night, they walked together through a quiet neighborhood, just two people without titles or masks. Julian stopped in front of a small diner. I haven't eaten here since I was 23, he said, smiling at the peeling blue paint and flickering neon sign. They went inside. The waitress recognized him barely and served them greasy fries and milkshakes that tasted like nostalgia. Julian told her about his early years, how he used to draw app ideas on napkins, how his first pitch was rejected by 12 investors in 1 week. Clara told him about her grandmother, who raised her after their parents died in a car accident, about Maya's anxiety about working 2 jobs before the flower shop started turning a profit. They were from different worlds, but somehow they kept finding the same language. Weeks passed. Julian started coming to the shop more regularly, but not to impress. Sometimes he just swept the floor, or helped Maya with inventory, or sat by the window reading while Clara arranged bouquets. People began to notice. Is that him? One customer whispered. The guy from Forbes. Looks taller in person, said another. Clara rolled her eyes, but she was smiling now. The kind of smile that didn't need permission to appear. Still, she knew this thing between them was fragile. Like holding water in her hands. Any sudden move and it could spill. One night, Julian showed up late, soaked from the rain. Clara handed him a towel and a cup of chamomile tea. Rough day, she asked. He nodded. Board meeting. Someone wants me to sell the company. Triple the current valuation. She blinked. Are you going to? I don't know. Part of me wants to run away. Start over. Maybe open a bookstore. Clara laughed. You'd hate it. Too quiet. Maybe. But lately I've been thinking, What if success isn't about how high you build? What if it's about who stands beside you when you stop climbing? She set the cup down slowly. And then she leaned in, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "Then maybe you've already made it." Julian closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he believed it. Julian had never been to the Bennett house before. It was small, painted pale yellow, with a garden out front full of tulips and lavender. Maya opened the door, startled to see him, but quickly smiled and stepped aside. Clara met him in the living room wearing jeans and a paint-streaked t-shirt. "Hey," she said softly, brushing a curl behind her ear. "You're early." "I brought dinner." He held up 2 paper bags from her favorite Thai place. They ate on the floor watching reruns of some old sitcom Maya loved. The night felt normal, grounded, like life could be this simple. After Maya went to bed, Julian and Clara stayed in the kitchen. "You really built this yourself?" he asked, admiring the hand-painted cabinets. "Mostly. Grandma taught us how to stretch a dollar." He nodded thoughtfully. Then she asked, "Have you decided about selling the company?" He hesitated. "Not yet, but I'm leaning toward no." Clara didn't push him. She just kept washing dishes, humming quietly. He watched her for a moment and then asked, "Can I ask you something?" She looked over her shoulder. "Sure. That day, when you found my wallet, why didn't you take anything?" Clara turned off the tap and dried her hands slowly. "My grandma used to say, you can lose your name, your job, even your way, but don't ever lose your dignity." She leaned against the counter. "We needed money. God knows Maya's hospital bills left us in a hole I thought we'd never climb out of. But stealing your cash wouldn't have solved that. It would have just made me someone I'm not." Julian swallowed hard. "I don't think I've ever met anyone like you," he said. "That's probably a good thing," she joked, but her eyes shimmered with something more serious. The next week, Julian invited Clara to a formal charity gala. She almost said no. The idea of champagne flutes and velvet gowns made her skin itch, but Maya practically shoved her out the door with a dress and heels. When she walked into the ballroom, Julian froze mid-conversation. She wore deep blue satin hair pinned up loosely, the silver locket she always wore, resting just above her collarbone. "You look unreal," he said, stunned. Clara smirked. "Well, don't get used to it." But the night wasn't easy. Everywhere she turned, there were whispers, lingering looks, questions murmured behind crystal glasses. "Is she his date? She runs a flower shop, I think, in the East End. I heard she's the one who found his wallet." Clara tried to block it out, tried to laugh when people introduced themselves like they suddenly cared. But the pressure simmered beneath her skin. Later, outside on the balcony, she breathed in the cool night air. Julian joined her. "You okay?" She nodded. "Just not my kind of crowd." He hesitated. "I should have warned you." She looked at him. "Why did you bring me?" "Because I wanted you here." Clara studied him. "Did you want me here? Or did you want them to see me here?" Julian's face fell. She hadn't meant it to sound accusatory, but the words were already in the air. "I don't care what they think," he said quietly. Clara looked away. "I do, because I still have to wake up tomorrow and go home and deal with real life. I can't afford to pretend this is normal." The ride home was silent. Julian dropped her off without trying to kiss her, without a lingering goodbye. As she stood in her driveway, watching his taillights disappear into the night, Clara realized something. She didn't need his world. She wasn't even sure she fit in it. But she did need to know if they had something real or just something passing. The next morning, Julian stared at a photograph on his desk, a picture of his parents. His mother had been a waitress, his father a mechanic. They died before his first startup went public. He remembered something his father once said, "Don't forget where you came from, son. That's the only map that matters." He grabbed his keys. Clara was pruning hydrangeas when he walked into the shop. "I owe you an apology," Julian said. She didn't turn. "For what?" "For not realizing how much I take for granted." He stepped closer. "When I lost my wallet, it felt like the universe knocking me down a peg, but it gave me the chance to meet you. And I've spent every day since trying to figure out how to be worthy of that." Clara finally looked at him. "Julian, I'm not here to fix you or impress you," he said. "I'm just here because I care, and I'm still learning what that means." She set down the clippers, then walked over and pulled him into a quiet hug. "Keep learning," she whispered. "But don't forget, I'm not some puzzle you have to solve." "I know." They stood there for a long moment, heartbeats matching in the silence of the shop. Later that night, Clara pulled out the wallet, the one she had returned all those weeks ago. Julian had insisted she keep it not for the money, but because it changed everything. Inside, she found a small note he'd left folded in one of the pockets. It read, "Sometimes losing what you thought mattered is the only way to find what really does." Clara smiled. And this time she didn't feel like she was standing outside of something beautiful. She was already inside it. 2 weeks passed. The mornings came earlier now as Clara opened the shop with a small radio humming in the background. She had started drying flowers again, a habit from her childhood. Petals lined her windowsills, curled and fragrant. But despite the routine, something had shifted. Julian came by the shop more often, not always with a reason. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes just a question about roses. Once he brought a potted cactus and said, "Teach me how not to kill this." Clara laughed harder than she had in years. But one rainy afternoon, the laughter faded. Julian sat across from her, quiet, too quiet. "I need to tell you something," he said. Clara waited. "I sold the company." She blinked. "You? What?" "Crosstech. It's done. The deal was finalized yesterday." Clara leaned back. "But you said—" "I know," he interrupted gently. "But I meant what I said before. I was tired of playing a role I didn't believe in anymore. I want something different." She studied him. "So what now?" Julian shrugged slightly. "I bought a small property in Beacon Falls. It has a greenhouse." Clara raised a brow. "You bought a greenhouse. I figured you could show me how to make things grow." She was quiet. Her heart stumbled somewhere between suspicion and something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Julian, what are you doing?" He gave a sheepish smile. "Maybe trying to build a life I don't hate waking up to." That night, Clara told Maya everything. Her sister listened while eating ramen noodles from a chip bowl. "I mean, do you like him?" Maya asked with wide eyes. Clara shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe. It's not just that. Because he's rich. No, because I'm not. And I don't want to be someone's charity case. I don't want to lose who I am in his shadow." Maya stirred her noodles and said, "You do realize how ridiculous that sounds, right?" Clara frowned. "Excuse me. You think being loved by someone who sees the real you would erase who you are, Clara? That's what you've always wanted. Someone who shows up. Someone who doesn't run." The words hit home. Hard. The next morning, Clara stood in the middle of the flower shop staring at an empty vase. She thought about her grandmother's voice, soft but certain. "Real love doesn't fix you. It stands beside you while you grow." She grabbed her phone and texted, "Meet me at the lake." Sunset. The lake near her childhood home was a quiet place, smooth waters, a single wooden dock stretching out into the mirror-like surface. Julian arrived early. Clara walked down to the edge barefoot, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. "Didn't think you'd come," she said. Julian looked up, smiling. "Didn't think I'd leave." They sat on the dock, shoulders brushing. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Clara broke the silence. "I used to come here when Mom was sick. When the house got too loud or too quiet, I'd sit right here and try to pretend the world made sense." Julian nodded. "You don't have to pretend anymore." She looked at him. "You don't get to save me, Julian. That's not what I want." He met her eyes. "I know, I just want to be beside you. That's it." A breeze passed over the water. And finally Clara said what had been clawing at her chest for weeks. "When I found your wallet, I didn't expect anything. But I hoped maybe doing something right would ripple. That maybe good still meant something in this world." Julian's voice was low. "It did. It does." Clara looked down at the water, her reflection broken by small ripples. "Are you sure you're ready for a quiet life?" she asked. "No more boardrooms, no more jets." He laughed softly. "Clara, I've never been more sure of anything." She took a deep breath, then reached into her pocket and pulled something out. His old wallet. He stared at it, surprised. "I thought I lost that again." She handed it to him. "Just thought you might want a reminder," she said, "of how far you've come." He turned it over in his hands, then looked at her with eyes full of wonder. "Only if you're in the picture." Clara gave him a small, steady smile. "I am." Weeks later, Crosstech made headlines for its record-breaking acquisition, but buried in the middle of the article, one small line read, "Former CEO Julian Cross declined to comment. Sources say he's focusing on building a local sustainable greenhouse initiative in upstate New York." And in a little flower shop downtown, Clara Bennett hung a dried bouquet in the front window. Customers noticed the new arrangement. Not just the flowers, but the lightness in her step, the way she smiled now with her whole face. As if finally she'd stopped waiting for the next storm. and started planting roots instead. Spring came early to Beacon Falls. Daffodils bloomed in stubborn clusters along the roadside, and the greenhouse Julian had purchased began to fill with color, not just from plants but from people. Clara helped him organize weekend classes on floral design. Local kids came after school to learn how to pot herbs. Elderly couples dropped off seeds from their gardens and stayed for tea. What began as a side project turned into something deeply personal, a place where things grew slowly but surely. Julian had never been busier, but not in the corporate way, not in boardrooms or under harsh fluorescent lights. Here he worked with dirt under his fingernails and a sunburn across his neck. He'd never felt more alive. Clara moved into a small cottage just down the road. Not into Julian's house, not yet. She said she needed her own space to think and breathe. He respected that. Sometimes after the workday ended, they'd meet at the dock with tea and cinnamon rolls, talk about the future. Not in grand gestures, but in slow, deliberate questions. What would you name a dog if we got one? Do you think we'll still be doing this when we're old? Do you think my mom would have liked you? They didn't say I love you yet, but everything they did whispered it. One afternoon, Clara got a letter in the mail, handwritten, formal. It was from Sasha, the same receptionist who once dismissed her without a second glance. The letter was short but apologetic. I wanted you to know that you changed something in that building the day you showed up. I've since started a fund for underprivileged young women pursuing business careers. You reminded me that some things are more important than profit margins. Thank you. Clara folded the letter carefully and tucked it into the back of her journal. She didn't need applause, but acknowledgement, quiet, sincere, still mattered. On a rainy Thursday, Julian took Clara to an old bookstore in town. Tucked between rows of used novels and dust-covered classics, he knelt down on one knee. He didn't open a velvet box, no diamond. Just a small locket with a dried petal inside from the first bouquet she'd ever given him. I don't want to own you or fix you, he said quietly. I just want to choose you. Every day, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones. Clara's breath caught, and for once she didn't overthink it. She knelt down too, right there on the carpet between cookbooks and gardening guides, and whispered, okay. Their wedding was small, held in the greenhouse surrounded by neighbor students and stacks of fresh basil and rosemary. Maya wore yellow and cried through the entire ceremony. They didn't promise forever. They promised presence, honesty, laughter, space. That was more than enough. Years later, a little girl with wild curls and muddy boots would run barefoot through that same greenhouse clutching a wilted tulip. Daddy, I gave this to Mama, but it's dying. Julian would kneel down beside her and say, then let's plant it and see what happens. Clara would watch from the doorway, her apron covered in pollen, and smile to herself. Not because life was perfect, but because it was theirs. Because one honest moment, one returned wallet, one stubborn act of integrity had quietly rewritten everything. You never know what the smallest act of kindness can bloom into. Sometimes it's not about what you get back. It's about what you grow along the way. So if you ever find yourself doubting whether good still matters, remember Clara, remember Julian, remember the wallet. And know this, real wealth isn't stored in vaults. It's planted in hearts and watered by moments that may seem invisible until they change everything. If this story moved, you take a moment to share it with someone who needs a reminder of what goodness can do. Leave a comment, hit subscribe, or just sit quietly and let it linger. From small acts grow deep roots. Thank you for listening.